Okay. Now, the Old Testament and the New Testament is divided by the birth of Christ. But we very seldom talk about the New Covenant. And as a matter of fact, that word is very foreign to many contemporary Christians. And yet that word is so important in the life of the Jewish people, the Israelites. The word covenant, the concept of covenant is so crucial to them. The word testament, it means nothing to them, essentially. Okay, so if we really want to understand the Jewish part of the Bible, which is mostly the Old Testament, we really need to look at it from a different angle. We need to look at a different angle. And that's what I'm trying to do from, today with you. Okay, now, the New Covenant refers to the new arrangement whereby God will send His Holy Spirit to write the law on human hearts. That's the New Covenant. Okay, let's, Jeremiah 31:33. No, see? The New Covenant is found in the Old Testament, not the New Testament. And it's long before the birth of Christ. And this is a very crucial verse, and I hope you remember that. Okay, 31:33, Jeremiah. This is the covenant I will make with the house of Israel after that time, declares the Lord. I will put my law, which means the new covenant still has the law. Do not think for a moment somehow the new covenant or the New Testament is only grace. The first misconception. I will put my law. It did not say I'll put my grace. Okay? Now, if you catch that point, you caught a lot of things already today. All right? I put my law in their mind and write it on their hearts. So it's not just on the hearts, also on the mind. Because the word heart for them, in the Jewish, it includes the mind, emotions, everything. Okay? So do not think about the heart as the cardiac part of our body. Don't have that kind of thinking. All right? Same thing for the blood of Christ. When we come to the New Testament, the blood of Christ does not mean the hemoglobin flowing, the fluid flowing in our veins. It means the death of Christ. Way back when, at one point, I think it was Christianity Today, had a series of 3 articles talking about the blood. The blood of Christ, and therefore the blood now, and the blood of Christ could come through our veins and clean us, bring all the waste material away, and so on and so on. That doesn't mean that. It means the death of Christ. So we take it literally, that's already a mistake. I'm quoting D.A. Carson on that one. Okay? All right. Good. Now, I will be their God, and they will be my people. So, as I said, the word mind and heart and so on, do not take it literally what we think about the brain and the heart and so on. No. Essentially it means the whole body, the whole person. Now, the new covenant was also announced by Jesus Christ. So that's why I'm saying it's no longer Old Testament, New Testament division. It doesn't help very much. It confuses things. So when you think about the New Covenant, also announced by Jesus, this is the cup of the New Covenant, written in my blood. And I told you about the blood part. It is my death. Okay, blood poured out for you. That means it's dying for us. Okay, that's in Luke, and I quoted the message. Began to be fulfilled by Jewish and Gentile believers during the church era. And in the book of Hebrews, explains it much more. Now, I won't go into all those references. You can check it. So, and I love the book of Hebrews because it explains the Old Testament so well in New Testament terms. Okay? It again breaks that barrier. I think somehow a lot of Christians mind this is the Old Testament like appendix. This is the New Testament, or this is the real thing. Or that's just the appetizer. I can do without. It's not. I really want, first of all, that we would take away that kind of thinking. It's totally wrong. That's sort of not meant to be. Okay? All right. As a matter of fact, the streams of Abrahamic, David, and the New Covenants find a confluence in the Millennium Kingdom, the Messiah. They all join together. They flow together. I think this is important to think of the Bible as one book, not as Old Testament, New Testament. That's for you specialize in the Old Testament, right? In the seminary, and you specialize in this. Well, partly because they use different languages. So I can understand why they do that. But as Christians, I hope today, I want you to start thinking they are part of one book. They're literally like the left and the right hand. You can't really do much without the other. Okay? All right. Before I move on to the second part, the law written on the heart. At first, the Old Covenant was the law written on tablets of stone. Now it's going to be written in their hearts. I'm going to use this analogy. Whether it's a good analogy or not, you decide. The hardware is changed, but the software is changed. The content hasn't been changed. It's just written on a different thing. It used to be a tablet. Now it's inside your cell phone or it's inside now. They told me before long we don't need to change SIM cards in our cell phones. It will be inside, and there may be 3 or 4 of them. You just switch. Press more times. It's coming. And essentially, that's what they're saying. It will be written inside. You don't need to carry another device, external drive, or whatever you need to do that. No, but the content is the same. So often we think about the Old Testament, New Testament, we somehow think the content is changed. That was the age of the law. Now is the age of grace. Totally wrong. That's totally wrong. It takes away the incentive to know the Old Testament. Somehow we think, oh, we don't live under the age of the law now. We live under grace now. Now we're going to talk more about grace later. But that's the starting point. Human being always been living under the age of grace and law. And as you shall see, they are one and the same thing. They're not two different, certainly not two opposites. Okay? They're the two sides of the same coin. You cannot have one without the other. Okay? All right? So far so good? Okay, let's move on. We can always come back then. Okay, that's why, as I say, law and grace, they really is the same thing. They really, the two sides of the same coin. The basis of law is grace. Well, you say, no. The Bible says, a tooth for a tooth, an eye for an eye. Well, that's the law. It says, if you take a tooth from me, I'm going to hit you back and going to get a tooth from you. And then an eye for an eye. Now, we totally misunderstand that verse. I'll tell you a bit about the background of that verse. Now, the purpose of that law, this verse, the tooth for tooth and eye for eye, is to protect the underprivileged. For example, Ken is a very rich man, and we all know that. Okay, I'm his slave. Okay, I'm his slave. I work for him, and then one day I carelessly, or not purposely, of course, I broke a vase in his home, or something. Now, he's totally mad. He wants to kill me. The law says you cannot do that. You can demand, I return or buy another vase for him. Equal value. But you cannot take someone's life for a tooth. You cannot take someone's life for an eye. A tooth for a tooth, it means something of equal value. It means that the penalty has to correspond to the crime. It cannot outweigh or disproportionately to do that. Okay? So an eye for an eye, a tooth for tooth, is to protect the underprivileged. It does not mean you have to revenge that way. You hit me once, I hit you once. It's not that. Okay? So if we think about the Old Testament as an age of law, then we say, well, law is this. That is not law. The way we usually think about the Old Testament is legalistic. And I want us to separate the law from legalism. Legalism is, I have to do this to get even. The law says, no, be graceful. This is all you can do. All you're allowed to do. Okay? So the basis of law is grace. So law and grace are not contrary terms. They're not. They are very complementary terms. As a matter of fact, the basis of the law is grace. And even the Israelites had to collect the manna. The law says you can only collect 1 day at a time. Well, the rule, that is not the law by then, at that time. But law with a small l, not a capital L. No, the rule was you can only collect 1 day. And yet, the day before Sabbath, you can collect 2 days. It won't decay. Grace. Grace. There is the law, and that's the grace. And then we have to understand the law and the grace are one and the same thing. They go hand in hand. Okay. In the book of Deuteronomy, which is one of my favorite books, Deuteronomy, and it sort of summarizes the first 4 books of the Old Testament. And Moses says, tell them, okay, tell the Israelites, when your children ask you about the law, this is the way you should reply. In other words, behind it, the meaning or implication behind that is that teaching the children the law of God is the parents' task, responsibility. Okay? Not the Sunday school, not the rabbi. The parents, especially the father. Especially the father. No, I'm not saying the mother shared it, joined it, and so on. But the father, the male figure is not biased. Sometimes they say the man is the head of the house and so on. You know, I'd rather not be, because that comes with great responsibility. Do not think that just comes with more power. It comes with a responsibility like this. Okay? But the point here is that this is how you should reply to your children. How? You start saying, once we were slaves in Egypt, the Lord brought us out with his mighty arm. Your children said, Daddy, that's not what I asked you. I asked you, what does the law say? Once we were slaves in Egypt. Oh, Daddy, there it goes again. I did not ask you what those things. I did not ask you about your past. I asked you about the law. Okay, I will tell you about the law. Once we were slaves in Egypt. Get the point? Before they even utter one word about the law, they start with the story of grace. Let me repeat that. Now, we have to grasp that. Even before the Israelites utter one single word about the law, Moses said, you have to give this preamble, this qualification. Once we were slaves in Egypt, the Lord brought us out with his mighty arm. You have to. Every time. No exceptions. Why? Because the law does not come before deliverance. The law came only after deliverance. The law, otherwise the law would have no meaning. Otherwise people would say, okay, God gave us the law, and say, if you keep the law, if you keep my law for 1 month without any transgression, I will take you out of Egypt, or so on. It has nothing to do with that. The Old Testament emphasized so much on grace. And grace, as we know, is free, unconditional. That concept of grace, unconditional grace, is not a New Testament concept. It is not. It is very much an Old Testament concept. It's very much an Old Testament concept. Okay? Yeah. There are two chairs on this side, on the side here, just for you people. Okay, all right, good. Now, and this is a very important qualification, but it's so crucial. I want, we have, you know, when we, I hope the Sunday school teachers here, pastors among us, when we tell people about the Ten Commandments, maybe we should say something like this. Once we were slaves in Egypt, the Lord brought us out with His mighty arm. That means, and that gives the reason why we keep the law. That takes away any chance of being legalistic. We're not keeping the law so that I can gain more merit in front of God. No. It's because we have already been saved, been delivered. Mount Sinai comes after the Red Sea. I think that concept has not been emphasized enough for among many churches. I think this is very important. Now, as I was just walking in the corridor, I see the Beatitudes, for example. Okay. Now, those are not commandments. You can't do it. They're not.